Rome was the headquarters of the Jesuits, founded by Ignatius of Loyola, another saint of the Counter-Reformation, or as some historians say, the Catholic Reformation. Philip Neri and Ignatius of Loyola probably did meet. Francis was a son of the Jesuits. He had known them in Paris and Padua. He visited them and followed up on their history in Rome. Their first house had been nearby. In Rome, their institution had been approved by the Pope. A window in the Jesuits' residence near the room where Ignatius died depicts his presentation of the original rule to his sons. Francis left an impression on Rome also, as this painting in the Capuchin Church in Rome testifies. He had responded eloquently in his examination in theology, presided over by the Pope and the Cardinals Bartolomeo and Baronius. He had debated before Father Bellarmine, later to become cardinal, then saint. Francis was approved to become a bishop, the successor of Bishop de Granier. Francis was granted a great number of the favors he requested of the Pope. He returned home by way of Turin. There he negotiated with the Knights of St. Lazarus to restore benefices to the pastors and parishes in the Chablais. In Thonon, Francis would remember his Roman experiences. He would try to set up a holy house and bring in the Oratorians, the sons of Philip Neri, to run it. Today an image of St. Philip Neri can be found outside the church in Thonon. In August of 1600, war broke out between France and Savoy. The Genevans joined France and again penetrated the Chablais. Between October 5th and 8th, King Henry IV of France appeared in Annecy. He dined in the Chateau of Annecy, high above the city, with his mistress. On that very day, October 5th, the official marriage by proxy was taking place in Florence between King Henry IV and Marie de Medici. This painting by Rubens, found in the Louvre, depicts the presenting of the portrait of Marie de Medici to Henry as a proposal for marriage. This painting from the same series depicts the marriage by proxy. That is, Henry wasn't there. His place was taken by another. He, however, was being legally married through the ceremony in Florence the same day he visited Annecy. Bishop de Granier was embarrassed because the king was present with his mistress on the very day he was being married by proxy to Marie de Medici. But the bishop interceded with the king anyway, on behalf of the Chablais in this building. The king promised that nothing would be introduced into the Chablais that would be contrary to the Catholic faith. During these uncertain times, Francis saved the Chablais again. He rekindled courage, supported the missionaries, and comforted the pastors. He confronted the occupation authorities and became engulfed in several legal and diplomatic battles. Nevertheless, in May of 1600, the book Francis had written originally in pamphlet form as a response to a pamphlet written by Minister Lafay was published in Lyon, The Defense of the Standard of the Holy Cross. Bishop de Granier asked Rome to intercede with King Henry IV. Rome entrusted this to the nuncio in Paris. Francis was sent to Paris to negotiate with the Pope's nuncio. He would meet the king in this section of the Louvre. As André Ravier remarks, during the 9 months of his stay, Francis, the humble Francis, was going to conquer the king, the court, all Paris. And in return, the king, here depicted, the court in Paris would make Francis a celebrity of national dimensions. Francis was invited to preach in the Queen's Chapel at the Louvre. Having nothing much else to do but await the outcome of his diplomacy, Francis did not see how he could refuse. The chapel was at this spot, now a police station in Paris. Francis said nothing in his sermons against Calvinism. This experience confirmed him in the conviction that the solution of religious conflicts resulted less from learned discussions than by the explanation of the truth, totally inspired by love. Francis also came into contact, almost daily, with a new desire for a spiritual life growing in Paris. The Acquarrie home, located on this street, became a center where many currents of spirituality met, from Spain, Italy, the Rhineland, and France. The Acquarrie group was instrumental in bringing the Reformed Carmelites of St. Teresa of Avila to Paris. Here Francis met the youthful Bérulle. With him, Francis planned to introduce the oratory of Philip Neri into France. On his return to Annecy, he learned that Bishop de Granier had died. Francis was ordained bishop in the small church in Tourhan, where he was baptized. 10 years later, Francis would say that this was a pivotal moment in his life. He had given himself to God. God had taken him to himself, then given him to his people. He had been converted from what he was for himself into what he could be for others. A statue of Francis as a bishop remains in the church. Chapter 6, Prince Bishop of Geneva. Once back in Annecy, Francis took up residence in the Lambert House just across from his cathedral. A stained glass window depicting Francis is now found in the stairwell. He would live here until 1610. Here he wrote the introduction to the devout life. Some of the objects he used as bishop are preserved in the museum of the Chateau of Tourhan, such as his mitre, his chasuble, his bishop's seal. Francis the bishop lived among his people amid the beauty of Annecy. He would develop a love for them and they for him. End of video 3. Produced by DeSales University. Directed and narrated by A. Robert McGilvray, Oblate of St. Francis de Sales.